Hello.
Yeah. Okay. We're not going to start quite yet. We're about 2 or 3 minutes away. But in the meantime, you should know that this is a very interactive session, which is fun. But it does mean you'll have to do a little bit of work beforehand just to make sure you're connected. So first of all, obviously, you want to be connected to the Wi-Fi, and that's OECD hotspot 4. I can't imagine anyone isn't already connected to the Wi-Fi. Then the second thing is you'll want to, if you haven't downloaded the event app already, you'll find your card sitting on you're probably sitting on it. But this is the card either underneath you or beside you, which will give you instructions as to how to participate in the polls. And there's some questions that are going to be up on the screen, which will, obviously, you won't be able to interact if you're not a part of that. So you can either do that via the event app, which you can download, or you can go and do it through the website on your phone. And then if you're tweeting out, well, I'll explain that later. But that'll give you a little bit of prep time, and we'll start in about 2 or 3 minutes. If it's not clear, raise your hand. Someone should be able to help you. Don't all raise your hands, because there's not enough people to help you. Okay. Okay, good. Seems to be clear so far. Is anyone unclear as to how it works? No? Yes? Oh, okay, all right. Danny, everyone's clear. Everyone's clear. All right. Chair's almost full, so we can start in about 2 or 3 minutes.
It's a 3-minute warning, so we're starting in 3. If you want. Do you want me to go and tell the guy?
Yeah. Move from one side of the room to the other. I did last time. I ducked down. I don't want to get into the frame. So when I move from one side of the room to the other, we've got 2 cameras there. So one is flat shot and one is a wide shot. Fine. So if I sweep in underneath, no problem. Try and give you a glance if I have to. I know it's bad form.
You don't want to be seen in the shot.
Well, it's just looks unprofessional. Just walk.
Yeah, just walk.
Yeah, fine. All right. Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're good. Yeah. Okay, let's start. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to 15 by 15. My name is Shiv Malik, and I am the moderator for this event. So, just so you know, the format of this talk is that our speakers come on stage for 15 minutes. They give their talk and their presentation, and then there are questions for 15 minutes, so hence the title of this talk. It all goes very fast, so please line up your questions for just after the end of the presentation. It's also a very interactive session. I explained this a few minutes ago to people who are in the room, but if you've joined us late, this is what's going on. This particular session, our speaker, Rob Nail, is going to be asking you, the audience, lots of questions, and will want answers. So you'll put out a poll, and he will want answers from all of you. In order to give your answers, you will have to do one of a few things. You'll find a card on your seat. You're probably sitting on it right now. If you're not, stand up, drag it out from underneath your backside. It's the first time I've said that at the OECD Forum. You can use the event app, and you can download the Swap Card app and create a profile. That might be a little tricky right now. The other way to do it is via the website. So that's the www.bcast.com /OECD4. OECD4 because this is the room that we are in, number 4. There's another element to talk to you about, which is if it's also interactive in another way, if you use social media, you can tweet about what's going on right now. We love that kind of stuff. And if you do tweet, then use the hashtag OECD4. However, it will appear on the screen behind the speaker. Some of these things are moderated, but sometimes they're not. And last year, one speaker was a little bit boring, and that got reflected on the screen behind the speaker as they spoke, which was... Actually, the audience didn't find it. I found it very embarrassing. They were fine with it, but I'm English, so this is like the worst thing you could ever do to me. So let's not have any of that then. This time around. There will be roving mics for the questions. I will go through that a little bit later on. And I should remind myself and the audience to, when you ask those questions, keep the mic close to your mouth, as I clearly have not done for the last minute. Let's get into it. This talk is called Innovating for a Sustainable Future. Rob Nail is the CEO and associate founder of the Singularity University. Back in 1999, he co-founded Velocity 11 to build automation equipment and robotics for cancer research and drug discovery. About a decade later, he joined the Singularity University, which celebrated its 10th anniversary. Was it this year? Last year? This year, yes. In March?
No, it's in September.
In September, okay. Yet to celebrate its 10th anniversary, but is this year. So recently, Nail wrote a blog about abandoning politics and instead innovating our way to a sustainable future. The piece was entitled, Beyond Politics, Innovating for a Sustainable Future, and in it he wrote, "We're proud to see an increase in breakthroughs that greatly improve our stewardship of the planet and global abundance, such as in vitro meat production, carbon capture techniques, genetic engineering of climate-resilient crops, advances in atmospheric water extraction, and countless others." So, tech for good has become a more contentious subject of late, given how hubristic Silicon Valley seems to have been. But innovating our way out of climate change has also been a very contentious issue amongst environmentalists. So I'm hoping Rob will be able to span all of this in his talk, Innovating for a Sustainable Future. Please welcome him to the stage. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. Hopefully I don't come off as a hubristic Silicon Valley tech entrepreneur, but I will try to be somewhat engaging. So first, how many of you have heard, just show of hands, heard of Singularity University before? Oh, wow, great. How many of you have attended Singularity University before? Oh, a couple. Well, interestingly, this is our 10-year anniversary, and we have grown pretty dramatically. This year, we have Singularity Summits in 15 countries. Last week, 2 weeks ago, there was one in Brazil, and next week, there's one in Berlin. So for those of you that are local, if you like what I'm sort of exploring here, you can attend the event in Brazil. If you don't like what I'm talking about, just don't tell anyone, please. Okay, so I want to talk about technology. At this point, hopefully everyone recognizes technology is having a major influence on our lives, businesses, and society. In fact, I think disrupting every aspect of our lives and society. But we don't have the structure and tools to really deal with technology moving at an exponential pace. So, first question for you. If you have the Bcast app, we're going to try to generate a quick word cloud to see what the sentiment of the room is at the beginning of OECD week. Okay? How do you feel about technology and our technological future today sitting in the room? Can you add one word into the app right now that describes how you feel about technological future? I'm seeing only about 35% audience participation right now. That's my AI gauge. Okay, can we pull up the word cloud to maybe create some more incentive for more people to add words if they don't like the words that are on the screen? That's it. Inspiring and worried. Done. It's solved. That probably sums it up, actually. I couldn't have done better. Okay, this engagement thing is only going to improve if we get more people to add more words to this. How about we come back to the word cloud at the end, because it may be some slowness in adding the words. Danny, how do you feel about the BCast? All right. Perplexed. Okay, that's going to kick off the engagement part here. Let's try a slightly different question. Can we go back to the slides? Okay, please, if you have the app, let's try this again. How optimistic are you now about our tech future? So here's the range. Normally, if we had more space, we'd do a human spectrogram. You'd line up in the room. Are you terribly frightened about the future? You think the apocalypse is going to occur, but the robots might be friendly. You're sort of the glass half empty. You're not sure, you're in the middle somewhere, glass half full. Or you believe this future of abundance and utopia is truly possible and is near. Okay, let's see if we can load those into the BCast. All right. Wow, this is wait, are we in France? Okay, that's starting to feel, wow, this is, I guess this is a multinational group, right? That makes sense. Okay, good. Well, this is good. This is a good start for the week. So we've got a pretty optimistic group overall, so that'll set the tone. Okay, let's go back to the slides. I think that's a good sentiment. Of course, 40% participation means the other half is probably weighing it down, so we'll just keep that out there. Okay, we're typically talking about the future as it being this horrible dystopian thing, and empirical evidence shows that progress has been extraordinary, right? We talked about it this morning. We see data all the time. Through technology, we've improved our lives pretty dramatically. However, it doesn't feel that way because we're constantly bombarded with news of which we don't know what's real or fake, and all of these crazy breakthroughs in technologies that are very difficult to understand what's real, relevant, urgent, important. For me, one of my bigger concerns is that we don't spend much time talking about the future, exploring the long-term future, thinking about the future in a 10, 20, 30-year time horizon. Most of our time is spent thinking about this quarter's earnings or the next election cycle. And that's about as far forward as we can think, which is a big problem. And what's worse, in the news and media and Hollywood, the only future that we're really telling ourselves we're living into is a dystopian Hunger Games zombie apocalypse scenario. Right? And I fear without a different version of the future of a story, we're going to manifest that very dystopian future. And of course, if we don't have a positive future to live into and we're oversaturated with news and media and the articles that are terrifying us about how bad the future is going to be, we're left in the state of anxiety and fear where we just want to retrench. And I believe this is what the rise of populism is all about. It's a lack of context and framework to understand the exponential pace of change that we're experiencing, and a lack of a positive long-term vision that we can all unite around. And I will also just start with this. This is the slowest period of change that you are ever going to experience going forward. This is the slowest it is ever going to go. It is only going to get faster. And all the things that we did to get here, all that progress, are not the same things we're going to need going forward. At Singularity University, we try to do three things. Specifically, equip people with a new mindset around technology in the future, new tools and resources, and a new network and ecosystem that supports a different way of thinking and acting at an exponential pace. Because these technologies are disrupting every aspect of our lives. Now, I love this quote from Ernest Hemingway. We actually see all of this coming. How did you go bankrupt? Two ways, gradually and then suddenly. We see the exponential pace of technology. We see the implications and some of the opportunities that are coming long term. We just don't spend much time operating and building plans around that. But we do have time, right? We do know that there are millions of truck drivers that within 5 years are going to be out of work. We have time to reskill and upskill, but we have to put concerted effort into doing that. So I'm going to, with this in mind, I'm going to throw out a couple quick forecasts of other big things that I believe we need to be thinking about on a longer term horizon and putting those into policy and local action now. Okay, first, everything that we move is going to move autonomously. Everything. Products, tools, food, us. Energy is going to get really, really, really cheap. It is already happening. It's an exponential curve. We're going to increasingly collaborate and be disrupted and integrate technology in our lives and work and day to day. And I actually think that there's not any task, both physical and cognitive, that over some period of time, and we can argue if it's 50 years or 10 years, that won't be disrupted by technology. We are all going to be connected very soon. In fact, the forecast is more like within the decade through projects like Loon and OneWeb, which means 3 to 5 billion more people are coming online. Right? The 2 billion unbanked today are going to have access within 5 to 7 years. All the transactions that we make, the format and function of those transactions is changing radically. And there is no transaction that will not be touched in the next, say, 20 years. And we launched GDPR last week. Our relationship with data is changing dramatically and is going to continue to evolve. And this is going to be a constant transition that we're going to have to navigate and deal with. I'm a big fan of this project called Wibson, funded by Telefonica. All my data, in fact, these are my Wibson points here. I just give all of my data to these projects and I earn points. I'm actually monetizing all the data that's coming off my cell phone today. It's a beta project, but one of the first marketplaces for selling my personal data as if it's my own. Okay, question. So those are just a few things coming. Here's another question. Maybe we'll just do, yeah, great. Who is responsible for the implications long-term of these technologies? In the US, we've been talking about Facebook and Cambridge Analytica. It's a crazy storm of noise. Who's responsible for the implications of new technologies? In Silicon Valley, we've got all these crazy entrepreneurs making all these amazing things. Should they be thinking 20 to 30 years out as to how that technology is going to be used? Or do we need to rely on the government to regulate all these things? I would expect a pretty even balance here, and I believe it's because there's this very natural tension between innovation and regulation. We need both, and they have to stay in a constant balance. Otherwise, we're either living in great fear and anxiety, or we're too slow to innovate, and the economy drops. Great. I would, so this is a fantastic, I love this. I'm going to have to capture this for later. Number 4, watchdog advocacy groups. There's some very interesting work thinking about private regulatory functions, working in collaborations with government and entrepreneurs. So stay tuned for more of that. Okay, one other big sort of realm of technology forecasts I just want to throw out there are the other part of data that's coming is our personal biological data. All biology is going digital. Sequencing the human genome has gotten very cheap. It'll be about the cost of flushing a toilet by 2022, which means all of our genetic DNA will probably be public information in the not-too-distant future, which has cascading implications in our lives and society. And because it's digital, it means every biological species is being edited and evolved consciously. We're changing every aspect of our world and humans. And we sort of know this, but we don't really pay attention to the fact that we are editing humans in the lab today. The first human who has been edited has not officially been born yet. These are all just lab projects. But we have a betting pool that the first human has been born who was genetically engineered at the embryonic state. And there's a big question now about, do we call this new species human? We fight over race and skin color today in insane ways. And we are about to see the dawn of a new species of humanity called Homo evolutus, is the working title that Juan Enriquez and others have brought out. You think we fight over trivial things today when we have a new species to contend with? Initially, it will just be about eradicating diseases in our lives, but that same tool will allow us to create greater strength, size, capacity for intelligence, lots of interesting things. Major consequences. And who is in charge of this? Who is regulating it? No one. This is technology that can work in the lab in a garage. Which means the US has its own ethics and morality and will probably regulate, but China has slightly different ethics and morality, as does the Middle East, as does Brazil and others. The government regulatory bodies are not going to decide what happens with the future of humanity. Exponential technologies are not easily contained. They cross all borders, which makes a very difficult challenge for us to create the future that we want to create. And I believe we have a choice today of what future do we want to create. Do we want the dystopian future, which will occur unless we start planning and articulating what a different future and the roadmap to get to it would be? So, last question. When deciding what brings us together, who is included in the us? Is it just the OECD member states? Is it all of humanity? Is it humanity and nature? Is it humanity, nature, and AI, and this other species of humanity called Homo evolutus? And how do we start planning around all of these new interactions in our world? All right, pretty delineated there. Great. Okay, can we go back to the slides quickly? All right, 4 quick recommendations around this. We've explored a lot of different projects. We have about 60 startup companies that focus on climate and different social impact areas. We work with a lot of Fortune 500 companies, many governments, many nonprofits. And we've learned a few things about what we believe can help unlock and point us towards that positive future. First, we have to talk about the future. We have to work on building a long-term vision and then supporting ideas that sound absolutely crazy. This is one thing that we do in Silicon Valley very well. When we hear a crazy idea, we say, that could be possible. And then we rally behind it. And if it fails, fantastic, we learn something. And we support that entrepreneur to do it again, or that policymaker to do it again. Second, we have to bring diverse perspectives to the table. We have 6 constituent groups that we always want to bring together with a geographical representation as well. We want startups, corporates, government, policymakers, nonprofits, other academic institutions, and investors and financial institutions. If you get those 6 different groups together, you can ideate in radically new ways, and you have everything you need to start and scale any kind of a solution. We like to call it building uncommon partnerships. And last, sometimes it just takes giving someone permission to work on a bigger problem. I've been fascinated by the number of times where we go somewhere with a lot of amazing entrepreneurs who are working on little startup software gaming things, and you say, hey, what about the world's water problem? And they can apply that same creativity to the biggest problems. Amazing things occur. But someone just has to grant the permission and then support that ecosystem around those new ideas. And last, this is really, I have a whole thesis about the future of education. We need to sort of move away from the degree mentality and shift to continuous learning. Because the world, again, is accelerating the pace of change around us. I love this quote by Astro Teller, who runs the captain of moonshots at Alphabet X. In a constant state of destabilization, the new kind of stability has to be dynamic stability, like riding a bicycle. Humanity has to learn to exist in this state. Everything we do from here on out, every process we put in place and infrastructure we put in place, should be constructed with the idea of adaptability. Because the way the world operates today is not going to be the same as it is a year from now. My last quote, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And my goal is hopefully to invite you all to join Singularity University events that are happening around the world, engage in this discussion which is taking place here at the OECD around the influence of technology on our lives and the amazing future that we can actually create. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rob, for that talk. That was absolutely fascinating. So, look, you've had lots of questions for us. Now we've got lots of questions for you. We've got about 11 minutes, obviously undermining the title of this session, 15 by 15. There we go. So, apologies. If you do get the roving mic, remember to first introduce yourself, and second of all, keep the mic close to your mouth. They don't pick up very well. But I'm going to start, so put your hands up if you do have a question, and we'll reach out to you. I'll wait for those hands to arise. But in the meantime, can I ask a question? So you talked about a lack of a positive vision of the future, and you think that's what may have caused, say, Trump and Brexit, but also it's something we need to rally around. Humanity has a problem at the moment, doesn't it, in that respect? But at the same time, aren't people right to sort of, given you can make a very good argument for declining living standards in developed countries, in OECD countries, certainly amongst a younger generation, aren't they right to feel kind of nostalgic for the past?
I think there's a quote that goes something like, the future always looks better with poor memory. The past always looks better with poor memory, right? And I would really, from everything we've seen, what poverty meant 200 years ago is not what poverty means today. Now, there's still a horrific situation in many parts of the world, and definitely in conflict regions. We have new challenges, but the world has radically improved from even where it was 50 years ago. And it can continue to do so. But we have to focus on that long-term perspective of what we can achieve and accomplish. And I think it's the government's role and media's role to be honest and real. And so I live in the US, which is a very weird place at the moment, where we have to be a little more honest about and have a little more critical thinking eye around what's real and not real, and what's possible and not possible. And unfortunately, in the face of all the fake news and everything else, we sort of hunker down and we want to retreat. And we're not willing to take risks and try things because we will be punished for it, potentially. And so that, yeah.
And how do you, and again, hands up if you've got questions. Okay, there's a lady over here and a lady over there. Great. Let me just jump in with one other quick one, which is then how do you respond to this growing sense from most ordinary people that, look, technology is here to displace me, right? Mm-hmm. There's someone squirreling away, creating an algorithm that will get rid of my job, and that's what its ultimate function is. You could call it Luddite, but it is true, right?
So what's happening today has always happened and will, I believe, always happen. It's the same. I call it the great wheel of human progress. I think what is most unique and amazing about humanity is our passion and drive to solve problems and be creative. When we're faced with some obstacle, we come together, we can collaborate, we can think about it, and we can invent new solutions. We take on that new solution, it changes our behavior, and then it opens up a whole new space of possibility, opportunity, and new challenges, which then we step into and invent, which then broadens our horizons on new opportunities and challenges. And this is the wheel that we are on. And it's been going for all of humanity, and I don't think we'll stop. So what we can do, however, I think, is now focus the wheel with more directionality and build roadmaps towards the future that we want to create. And I think the UN's Sustainable Development Goals are the closest that we have today of roadmaps of a future of what we like to call a future of abundance, where we can allow for energy to be very cheap and accessible to everyone. education, healthcare, security, shelter. Technology can provide all of those things on a time horizon, equitably for everyone, at a level that is better than the richest of us in the Western world can achieve today. And I'm happy to talk more about what I mean by that. You can see the roadmap that technology can bring that. It's not a technology problem, and those big challenges have never been technology problems. Those are social and political courage problems.
So could you share, hi, I'm sorry, my name is Leila Shark. Could you share a little bit of what you mentioned in the group of the lobbying, the government, the startups, and how it goes? Because technology indeed evolves at a high speed, but legislation and regulation and the way to implement those changes, by the time that we start making them, it's already obsolete.
Yeah, right.
So how do we go about it from that perspective, and what is your vision about it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I wish I had an answer. I do think there are some interesting novel approaches to it at the moment. I mentioned briefly private regulatory functions, where we can build collaborations and incentivize private regulatory groups to understand the principles and goals of government regulatory functions, and then they work directly with the startups to align to those goals. And there's an incentive mechanism to do that. So this is what the private market is good at, is aligning incentives in a direction. If you can get the incentives properly, you can get the right outcomes. That being said, there's some great research by Kevin Kelly, who was the original editor of Wired magazine. He's been writing all kinds of interesting books. He recently wrote a book called Inevitable, which is like his top 12 technologies. The inevitable term is too deterministic, right? It's not. The future is not determined at this stage. There is a lot of possible scenarios. But one of the things that he did in this work was he looked at the last 1,000 years of regulatory, of technologies that we tried to prohibit for social, political, or religious reasons. 1,000 years ago, we could prohibit a technology for 300 years. And obviously that timeline has declined down to virtually zero. And it is because, in our framing, exponential technologies are rapidly democratized. And with genetic engineering of embryonic stem cells in the US, 12 years ago now, the US decided under George W. Bush to regulate this. And all the pharma basically moved shop to China and Brazil and a couple other places in the world. It did not slow progress down at all. And that's the case with AI, with genetic engineering, with all of these different technologies. If there's a commercial opportunity long term, the market will find a path for it to come out, which is a big challenge. So how do we determine who should be in charge of the future of humanity's genetic, the future of our genetic species? I think the only opportunity I think we have today is the Asilomar-like convention. So back in the 80s, we had an Asilomar convention where the world's scientists and thought leaders came together and said, look, this genetic engineering thing is going to move faster than the government can decide, and we don't want the government to decide. So let's create some common principles about where we think the future should go. And so today there are Asilomar-like conventions for AI research. There's one for genetic engineering, not as inclusive as it needs to be. And there's one around brain-to-mind technologies. So Facebook is a technology that is changing how we think. It is manipulating how we think. And if there's any argument about that, we can take that offline. But it is changing how our brain works and how we think. It is manipulating us. So how do we decide the principles for designing the future of those technologies? And so there's a commonality, there's a group of thought leaders worldwide that are trying to come together to create those design principles going forward. That is the only thing I know of that we have. Yes.
Thank you, the lady over here.
Thank you. Good morning, Holly Niemela, Mindful and Peaceful Interventions. Happy to see you here.
Hello.
My question is about changing your mindset, changing people's mindsets, because as you're saying today, we have maybe a big gap. I just attended the reskilling talk, and everyone agrees we have to reskill, but we also have to understand that we have kind of a software running really fast on our bodies, which is old hardware. Okay, and I'm not talking about old people. I'm talking about that's how the physical human body is structured. What do you see in the future? Are we going to up like this next human process up the physical body. What about all of us now that are still around on this planet? And how do we help people change the mindset to go from this jump to this new paradigm that we're all creating in the future?
Wow, good question.
Sorry, that's a lot.
No, there's a lot in there. So just quickly, a couple big things. One, we're learning every day how this thing works. The space between our ears, how our brain functions, is still new to us. Our psychology and our behaviors that come out of how we interact with the world, we're still learning, right? Cognitive biases is a term that has come over the last sort of 5 to 6 years. And we're starting to realize that our free will and the way that we interact in the world is heavily manipulated by the world around us. So first piece is just acknowledging the problem, recognizing that these things are happening and how we interact with it. For me, that's the first step, is just recognizing what's actually happening. And then we can have some conscious direction about where we want it to go. And for me, I believe bringing people together with some intention of where you want to go, and then doing a deep dive is the easiest way to shift mindsets.
Right, I told you it was fast and punchy. We've got 3 minutes left and time for one other question. The lady at the front here.
Hi, I'm Corinne Kokenauer, recycling, waste management, and energy questions, as well as the movement called Transition Towns. And in that movement, we think a lot about the world's problems and limits of resources, such as the limits to growth, which has been edited 3 times, and systems thinking, all this kind of thing. So a question I have is, if you're going to take on the concept of limits, physical limits on our planet, knowing that today in the U.S., for example, the average person is living with a spending of 5 planets worth or 4, and a lot of the technologies do use materials and energy. How can we project going forward and assume that we will all have autonomous cars when that does take lithium that is limited and other metals, etc., not to mention the energy? And how do we also get away from, I mean, I'm all into new visions, and we have a lot too, but how do you get away from the other extreme of techno-miracles and move towards techno-choice and what you want to take on as new technology? I, for instance, have an old phone.
We should keep it short.
I have an old phone.
Lots of questions.
And,
it's
yeah,
great.
So.
So we can wrap up, otherwise we won't.
So I agree with you. Figuring out how we want to live in that future is really my call to action. Let's try to articulate a long-term future that we want to create, and then all of the resource problems, those are just challenges to be solved. I do not think there is a resource limitation in any regard. And the reason I say that is we're tackling it from both directions. One, millennial generation does not consume the same way as the older generations do, my generation and my parents. That's changing. We are not all going to own cars in the future. I am certain of that, and that is going to change how we operate. So our behaviors are going to change. It's going to change our consumption patterns, and my biggest fear is this transition period that we go through before we have a new model that works, as China and emerging markets try to live into the fantasy Western Hollywood fantasy thing. We're going to have a problem in the short term. Long term, it's just a problem to be solved, and there's more energy than we could ever need to deal with. We're never going to run out of fossil fuels because there's more solar energy than we need in a year that hits the planet in 1 hour. We just have to capture it, which is a technology problem to solve, and we will. It's just a matter of time.
Thank you very much. That's a great optimistic note to end on. Thank you very much to Rob Hale. And thank you very much to the audience. Thank you very much for joining us. We obviously have 3 other talks today, and one starting in about 20 minutes or so. Stopping ocean plastic, how plastic banks, blockchain turns waste into currency. Please join us for that too, and that starts in 20 minutes. There we go. All right.